Picture this. It's the year 1206. A guy named Temüjin, one who most people have never heard of, controls a bunch of tribes in Mongolia. 21 years later, his empire stretches from Korea to Hungary. That's 12 million square miles, the largest connected land empire in human history. And here's the wildest part. He did it all on horseback. No phones, no planes, no GPS. Just horses, strategy, and an absolutely ruthless approach to power. His name was Genghis Khan, and today we're figuring out how he built the fastest growing empire ever and why it couldn't last. I'm Jack, this is Blueprints of Power, and we're about to blow your mind. Let's ride. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Blueprints of Power. I'm Jack.
I'm Lily.
And I'm Charlie, and I'm so pumped for this episode.
Why's that?
Because the Mongols were absolutely insane, in the best way possible.
They really were incredible and terrifying.
Today, we're breaking down the Mongol Empire, how they built their power and how they lost it. And when we say they built it fast,
we mean fast. At its peak in the mid-12th century, the Mongol Empire controlled about 24% of the Earth's land. That's almost a quarter of the entire planet.
Wait, a quarter of the planet?
Yep. Bigger than Rome at its peak. Bigger than any empire before or since in terms of connected land.
And they did it in basically one generation. That's like if someone started a company in 2000 and by 2025 they owned a quarter of all businesses on Earth.
That's bonkers.
It really is. So today, we're going through the whole story. How a nomadic tribe from the middle of nowhere became the most feared force in the world, how they ruled such a massive empire, and what eventually brought them down.
And I think what's coolest about the Mongols is that they completely changed how we think about warfare, trade, and communication. They revolutionized everything.
Also, they rode horses like absolute bosses.
Also that. All right, let's start at the beginning. Lily, take us to Mongolia in the 1100s. What's going on?
Okay, so Mongolia in the 1100s is basically vast grasslands, the steppe. No cities, no farms, just open plains stretching forever. And living there are nomadic tribes who move around with their animals and live in portable tents called gurs or yurts.
So they're always moving?
Pretty much. They follow their herds, horses, sheep, goats, and these tribes are constantly fighting each other over resources, pasture land, and pride.
So it's chaotic.
Very chaotic. And into this world, around 1162, a boy is born named Temüjin.
Wait, that's Genghis Khan?
That's his birth name. He doesn't become Genghis Khan until later, and his childhood is rough. His father, a tribal chief, gets poisoned by enemies when Temüjin is only 9. His family gets abandoned by their tribe and left to starve.
Whoa, that's dark.
It gets worse. Temüjin's family barely survives. They're eating roots, fish, whatever they can find. And then when Temüjin's a teenager, a rival tribe kidnaps his wife, Berta.
Okay, so he's had the worst life possible.
Pretty much. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of giving up, Temüjin starts building alliances. He asks for help, he makes deals with other leaders, and he rescues his wife. And people start noticing this guy is smart, loyal, and tough.
So he's building a reputation.
Exactly. And over the next 20 years, Temüjin starts uniting the Mongol tribes, sometimes through alliances, sometimes through battle. But he's doing something nobody else had done. He's not just conquering people, he's bringing them together.
How's he doing that?
Meritocracy. Instead of giving power to people based on their family or their tribe, he promotes people based on skill and loyalty. If you're a good warrior or a smart strategist, you can rise up, even if you were born a nobody.
So it's not about who your parents are.
Nope. It's about what you can do. And that's revolutionary for the time. People want to follow him because they know they'll be rewarded if they're good at what they do.
That's actually genius.
It really is. And by 1206, Temüjin has united all the Mongol tribes under his leadership. They hold this massive gathering called a Kurultai, and they declare him Genghis Khan, which means universal ruler.
So that's when he officially becomes Genghis Khan.
Yep, and now he's got a united Mongol nation, a loyal army, and a plan to expand beyond the steppes.
Here we go.
So what makes the Mongol army so effective?
Oh man, so many things. First, horses. Every Mongol warrior has multiple horses, usually 3 to 5, so they can switch between them and travel huge distances without stopping. They could cover 60 to 100 miles a day.
That's like driving on a highway.
Basically. And they're not just riding horses, they're master archers who can shoot while galloping at full speed. They practice this their entire lives.
So they're like cavalry snipers.
Pretty much. And they use these composite bows that are incredibly powerful. They can pierce armor from 300 feet away. Plus, they travel light. No heavy armor, no supply trains. They live off the land and move fast.
So they're basically unstoppable.
Almost. And their tactics are brilliant. They use fake retreats to lure enemies into traps. They send scouts ahead to gather intelligence. They use psychological warfare, spreading rumors about how brutal they are so cities surrender without a fight.
Wait, so they're using fear as a weapon?
Absolutely. Genghis Khan would sometimes spare cities that surrendered immediately and completely destroy cities that resisted, just to send a message to everyone else.
That's intense.
Very intense, but it worked. By 1215, the Mongols had conquered northern China. By 1220, they'd taken over Central Asia. By 1227, when Genghis Khan died, the Mongol Empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea.
In just 21 years.
In just 21 years, and after Genghis died, his sons and grandsons kept expanding. They conquered Russia, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and more of China. By 1279, under Genghis Khan's grandson Kublai Khan, they controlled the largest land empire in history.
That's absolutely wild.
Okay, so they conquered fast and conquered big, but how did they actually rule all this land? That's got to be the hard part.
All right, quick break. If you're vibing with this episode, and honestly, how could you not? The Mongols are incredible. Do us a solid and hit that follow button. Subscribe to Blueprints of Power on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're listening. We've got so many more empires coming your way. Next week, the Ottoman Empire. After that, the British Empire, the Aztecs, ancient Egypt. We're covering all the heavy hitters. Share this episode with your friends, your family, your history teacher, your weird uncle who loves horses. Post it on your socials and leave us a review. Seriously, it helps us reach more listeners, and we actually read every single one. All right, back to the Mongols, because we're about to get into how they ran the biggest empire ever. Let's go.
Okay, so the Mongols control basically half the known world. How do they keep it all together?
That's the really interesting part, because conquering is one thing, governing is way harder, and the Mongols had to figure this out fast.
So what's their recipe?
Okay, ingredient number 1, religious tolerance. This was huge. The Mongols didn't force people to change their religion. You could be Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever. They didn't care as long as you paid taxes and didn't rebel.
Wait, that's surprising? I thought conquerors usually forced their religion on people.
Most did, but the Mongols were practical. They realized that letting people keep their beliefs kept things peaceful. Genghis Khan even had advisors from different religions.
That's actually really smart.
Super smart. Ingredient number 2, the Yam system. This was their postal and communication network. They built stations every 20 to 30 miles across the entire empire where messengers could change horses and rest.
So it's like a highway rest stop.
Exactly. And messages could travel incredibly fast, sometimes 200 miles in a day. That meant the Khan could communicate with commanders thousands of miles away.
That's basically ancient email.
Pretty much. And it also meant trade could move safely and quickly. Which brings me to ingredient number 3, the Silk Road. The Mongols protected and expanded trade routes connecting east and west.
The Silk Road. That's the route between China and Europe, right?
Yep. And under Mongol protection, it was safer than it had ever been. Merchants could travel from Venice to Beijing without getting robbed or killed. The Mongols even gave out passports, tablets that guaranteed safe passage.
Wait, they invented passports?
Kind of. They called them paisas. If you had one, you were under Mongol protection. Nobody messed with you.
So trade is booming.
Massively. And that means ideas are spreading too. Technologies, knowledge, inventions, they're all moving between East and West. Some historians say the Mongols basically created globalization.
Whoa.
Ingredient number 4, meritocracy and organization. Just like when Genghis Khan was rising, the Mongols promoted based on ability. They had this decimal system where the army was organized into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. Everyone knew their role.
So it's super organized.
Very organized. And they absorbed the best practices from the people they conquered. They used Chinese engineers to build siege weapons. They used Persian administrators to help govern. They adapted and learned constantly.
So they're not just warriors, they're like talent scouts?
In a way, yeah. They'd find experts and put them to work. And ingredient number 5, discipline and law. Genghis Khan created a legal code called the Yasa. It covered everything: theft, murder, adultery, even littering.
Littering?
The Mongols were serious about keeping things clean and organized, and the punishments were harsh, often death. But the laws applied to everyone equally, even nobles.
So nobody was above the law?
Exactly. And that created stability. People knew what the rules were and that they'd be enforced.
This is making them sound way more sophisticated than I expected.
Right? Most people just think of the Mongols as brutal conquerors, and they were brutal. Don't get me wrong. Millions of people died during their conquests, but they were also incredibly strategic administrators.
It's like they were good at war and good at peace.
Exactly. They knew you can't just keep fighting forever. You have to build something sustainable. And for about 80 years, the Mongol Empire created this incredible period of peace and prosperity called the Pax Mongolica.
Pax Mongolica, like Pax Romana.
Yep. And during this time, you had amazing cultural exchange. Marco Polo traveled from Europe to China and back. Paper money started spreading from China to the West. Gunpowder, printing, medical knowledge, all moving along these trade routes.
Wait, so the Mongols basically helped spread all these inventions?
They did, because they created safe, open roads for ideas to travel. It's honestly one of the most important periods in human history for cultural exchange.
That's incredible. So they're running this massive empire, trade is booming, ideas are spreading. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, here it comes.
Before we get into how the Mongol Empire fell, I just want to say thank you for being part of the Blueprints of Power community. If you're enjoying these episodes, please share this show with someone who'd love it. Send it to a friend, a teacher, a parent, anyone who's curious about history and how power really works. Next week, we're covering the Ottoman Empire, an empire that lasted over 600 years and controlled the crossroads between Europe, Asia, and Africa. You're definitely going to want to hear that one. And if you haven't already, please leave us a rating or review. It genuinely helps more people discover the show, and we love reading what you think. All right, time to talk about how even the mighty Mongol Empire eventually crumbled. Let's get into it.
So the Mongol Empire is at its peak. They control more land than anyone in history. What happens?
The decline starts pretty much as soon as the expansion stops. And the first big problem is the empire is just too big.
Too big? I thought bigger was better.
Not always. The Mongol Empire stretched from Korea to Eastern Europe. That's 12 million square miles. Communication took weeks or months. And remember, the Mongols were nomads. They were good at moving and conquering, but governing a massive settled empire, that was harder.
So they're struggling to hold it together.
Right. And then you have the succession problem. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, his empire was divided among his sons and grandsons. That's fine for a generation, but eventually you've got all these relatives competing for power.
So they're fighting each other.
Exactly. By the late 1200s, the Mongol Empire had basically split into four separate khanates: the Golden Horde in Russia, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Yuan dynasty in China. They were still technically one empire, but they weren't working together anymore.
So unity is breaking down.
Big time. And each khanate started adapting to the local cultures. The Mongols in Persia became Muslim. The Mongols in China became more Chinese. The original Mongol identity was fading.
So they're losing what made them special.
In a way, yeah. And then you have military challenges. In 1260, the Mongols tried to invade Egypt and got defeated by the Mamluks at the Battle of Ain Jalut. It was the first major loss for the Mongols, and it showed the world they weren't invincible.
What about Kublai Khan? Wasn't he running things?
Kublai Khan ruled the Yuan dynasty in China, and he actually did pretty well. He completed the conquest of China, he promoted trade, he built up Beijing, but he also made some big mistakes.
Like what?
He tried to invade Japan twice, and both times his fleets got destroyed by massive typhoons that the Japanese called kamikaze, divine winds.
So nature beat them.
Nature beat them, and those invasions were incredibly expensive. Meanwhile, maintaining the empire was getting harder. The Mongols were spending tons of money on administration, armies, and building projects.
So they're running out of money.
And resources. Plus, by the 1300s, the conquered peoples were getting tired of Mongol rule. In China, there were rebellions. In Persia, instability. In Russia, local princes were pushing back.
So the empire's fragmenting.
Exactly. And then came one of the worst disasters in human history, the Black Death.
Wait, the plague?
The plague. It started in Central Asia around 1330 and spread along the Mongol trade routes, the same routes that had made them so powerful. By the time it was done, it had killed maybe 75 to 200 million people across Asia, Europe, and Africa.
That's horrifying.
It was catastrophic, and it devastated the Mongol Empire. Trade collapsed, cities emptied out, and the economy crashed.
So their greatest strength, the trade routes, became their weakness.
Exactly. And by the mid-13th century, the Khanates were basically independent. In 1368, the Yuan dynasty in China got overthrown by the Ming dynasty that was the heart of the empire. And it was gone.
What about the other parts?
They lasted a bit longer but kept shrinking. The Golden Horde in Russia lasted until the late 1400s. The other khanates faded into smaller kingdoms. By 1500, the Mongol Empire as a unified force was completely gone.
So it lasted about 150 years?
Give or take. But here's the thing. Even though the empire fell, the Mongol legacy didn't. They permanently changed warfare, trade, and global connections. They proved that you could unite diverse peoples under one rule if you were tolerant and practical. And they opened up the world in a way that had never happened before.
So the empire fell, but the impact lasted.
Exactly.
All right, so we've covered the rise, the reign, and the fall of the Mongol Empire. Time for the big question. What can we learn from all this? Charlie, you're up first.
Okay, here's mine. Speed and momentum are powerful, but they're not sustainable forever. The Mongols conquered half the world in 25 years, which is insane. But eventually, you have to stop moving and start building. And if you don't adapt, you'll fall apart.
So know when to shift gears.
Exactly. You can't just keep conquering. At some point, you gotta govern.
That's really good. Mine's about meritocracy. The Mongols showed that when you promote people based on skill instead of birth, you get the best talent. They built an empire by letting anyone rise to the top if they were good enough. That's a lesson that applies to sports, business, schools, everything.
Talent over tradition.
Exactly.
Love it. All right, mine's this. Connection changes everything. The Mongols didn't just conquer land, they connected east and west in a way that had never happened before. They created roads, protected trade, and enabled the exchange of ideas. And that changed the course of human history. The lesson, building bridges matters more than building walls.
Ooh, I like that.
That's perfect.
So there you go. 3 lessons from the Mongols. Adapt to sustain growth, reward talent over tradition, and connection creates power.
I'm inspired to go ride a horse.
Please don't.
Yeah, maybe stick to listening. All right. Next week, we're covering the Ottoman Empire, an empire that lasted over 600 years, controlled 3 continents, and reshaped the balance of power between Europe and Asia.
600 years?
600 years. The Ottomans figured out how to sustain power in a way the Mongols couldn't.
Okay, I'm definitely tuning in for that.
Same. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for hanging with us on Blueprints of Power.
I'm Lily.
I'm Charlie.
And I'm Jack, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.